Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where the topic is NextGen PSA, Dynamics 365 Project Operations, and OnePlan. My name is Robert Stickle. I'm also joined by my colleagues Jim Patterson and Matt Willey. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question feature to submit any questions that you may have. I will address these during the webinar and will respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, no need to worry, as I will be emailing a link to the presentation once it has been posted to our YouTube channel. I will now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thanks, Robert, and welcome everybody. We're excited to present this topic to you today on NextGen PSA. So let's get to it. So first of all, what is PSA? You know, for us guys, we think about it as that thing we get in our physical and a reading we get on our test and our levels. But PSA in this term is really professional services automation. And it really is solutions and software that are designed to assist services professionals and services organizations with the project management and resource management that they have to do for client-facing projects. What types of things does a PSA solution deliver? Well, from the intake side, it's opportunity management and the deals that might come in for their services engagements. Those things turn into contracts, which then in turn turns into projects. Then the projects have to be resourced and those have to be managed from a utilization perspective and a financial perspective. There's all the documentation and collaboration that has to happen around that. There's time and expenses because it really reflects what we can bill to the customer and what we can justify to the customer. And the service analytics really gives us the reporting that we need to see, are we on track? Are we remaining profitable in our engagements, et cetera? So that really is the definition in this case of what PSA means. And in this marketplace, that idea of customer-facing projects is becoming more and more important. We're becoming an economy of project-based, people-centric, customer-centric types of things. You know, we've gone through different revolutions in our economy. There was the age of manufacturing, you know, back in the early days, you know, in the 1900s when things started going with mass production. We went to the age of distribution where the differentiator for companies was really about how can we get more efficient in distribution with global connections and transportation systems and just-in-time types of ways to get to things. And then there was the age of information with connected PCs and supply chains and getting more effective with businesses because of the way we managed information. And information was a power and a competitive edge. And now with the age of the customer, we have a new wave of informed and empowered buyers that oftentimes, you know, have done a lot of research on things before they get to us. And there's a level of customer obsession now to satisfy those, and the competition to get their mind share and their loyalty is weirdly where we're at today. And that's the new wave in that rise of the customer. So what's the state of the market today? Well, one is analysts say that the customer experience is going to be king, that in this decade, customer experience will overtake price and product as the key brand differentiator as to why people choose to work with a particular provider. Also productivity. With all the demands we have and the time switching and the distractions in our organizations, 40% of a worker's productive time is lost when switching tasks. That means they're going back and forth from project to non-project or multiple projects. And this is estimated to cost the global economy $450 billion a year, almost $500 billion. And then there's the speed of business that is not slowing down. It's continuing to accelerate. And that's really driving this digital transformation age that we're in, where people are trying to get more efficient, more effective, and come up with new business models. And that organizations that embrace this digital transformation generate an average of $100 million more in income each year than companies that do not. Just things to consider is what's driving the need for change. And in the service market itself, the trends and challenges that we're seeing are such that now we're an economy of project-based, people-centric services businesses that are more client-centric and client-focused. These clients demand greater predictability and accountability from us as providers and the value for their services and their spend. So we have to justify everything that we do. And there's no blank checks being written out to providers. Also, with the increased globalization, there's centralization and modernization and streamlining of operations, going more from a client-server model to more centralized cloud-based type of operations. And we're a global type of economy where we either within our companies themselves or with our partners and our vendors, we're definitely a distributed workforce. We also have a diverse workforce across a variety of generations and cultures because we've gone global, and meaning the needs or the expectations or the things that we gravitate to are different depending on where we fit in that diverse workforce. And another piece is that in services, more than half of services projects are now fixed price or fixed fee and time, meaning that we have to get better at managing those to squeeze out profit because the customer is holding us accountable to a fixed number. On top of that, there's an even increased trend in agile delivery that people, it's not just for software development anymore, people are delivering services in a more agile fashion, and they're being tracked in different ways because of that. Because of these diversity of approaches, we've ended up with a hodgepodge of point solution spreadsheets and email to manage these types of engagements and projects in organizations typically today, even after we've come all this way. So let's talk about what some of those challenges are. From a professional services roles in an organization, here's just some of them. A practice director who's in charge of the operations, for example. Is my practice profitable and are my customers happy? It's not just good enough that we deliver, but we have to deliver in a way that makes money for the company. I'm the resource manager. How can I staff our projects and keep my team happy? So it's a combination of being able to deliver the work, but also not burn everybody out to where you lose people. The PMO. I need to make sure our projects are on track and on budget and meeting revenue goals. So looking at the aggregate and providing information to leadership on how things are tracking. And the team members who are working on these projects, I need to ensure my customer is happy, first and foremost, because the customer is king in these customer-facing projects, and also be able to make my individual targets and goals like utilization and such. So this project-centric services economy is still evolving. And organizations need things like these. They need flexible ways to respond to changing business models in the services world, and it continues to change. They need automation of their business processes, all the way from the lead or the opportunity, all the way through the billing, and have insights all the way throughout that life cycle. And they also need an optimized workforce productivity to ensure project success. It's not only the fact that it's competitive out there, and we have to be able to do things in an efficient way, we have to also do it in a way that's efficient enough so that we can become profitable with the services that we provide. So all too common today, there's a variety of systems, and we talk about point systems and solutions, we talk about spreadsheets and email. You know, we end up with a lot of disparate systems and data silos in many organizations today, and because of this separation and siloing, it's impacting success. If we look at people like project managers, maybe working in a PSA solution or a project and portfolio management PPM solution, right? And they have disconnected tools and difficult handoffs with sales, from selling the deal to who actually has to execute on what's been sold. You know, resource managers have lack of visibility oftentimes into projects and, you know, the real-time reality of the way resources are actually being deployed as opposed to the way they were planned. You know, the account manager in CRM often doesn't have visibility into how the existing engagements are going. So when they're talking to their customers, they might be blindsided by, you know, whether or not things are going well or not when they talk to their actual customer. And just the team members, all the folks who are participating in these things, the collaboration, the social aspects, entering time and expense and those types of things. And then ultimately the finance pieces. Something's got to bring this together into cohesive pictures so all these roles can actually have a good picture and be effective in this process. So the impacts of disconnected processes and systems, these are just some of them. But from a PSA perspective, you know, increased costs, customer dissatisfaction, barriers to entry, walls between ourselves internally within our functional areas, and also communication barriers between us and our customers. Ultimately, none of it's good unless we mitigate this and deal with it, right? There's no positive things that come from having disconnection and barriers between us. So the analysts have shown over the past that process maturity in this professional services area drives business performance. If you think about levels of maturity on the left-hand side, from a level 1, that's heroic, all the way up through level 5, which is collaborative excellence. If you break these into 3 chunks, the top 5%, which is that level 5, the ones who are really good at it, show 31% profit in their services, as opposed to 2% loss for the bottom 55%, which is level 1 and 2. And maturity is determined through the alignment and focus within and across functions, meaning these things have to synergize and work well together. And performance and process maturity are tightly linked. If the farther we go up the maturity chain, as you go into each of those columns on the right, and you get into those numbers, we get a higher bid to win ratio, right? We have better employee billable utilization. We end up having more projects delivered on time, and our project profit margins and our earnings go up substantially as we go up through this. So there's a real business benefit to getting better at this. So we need to unify this project-centric business model, right? And if we think about internally the roles that we have to do, the project managers, the resource managers, the account managers who are working with the client, the partner managers who are working with our third parties, our CXOs who are responsible for the overall health of the business, and the finance managers who are managing the details of the costs and the profits, and the team members who actually have to execute on these things in a way that makes sense and be able to navigate whatever processes we have. These are things that have to be involved with the roles that have to be addressed. And more importantly, it's the end customer. They need to be satisfied with all aspects of our business. And if they're not, what we're doing internally doesn't matter. So project operations from Microsoft is the PSA solution recently offered and updated from an older version of the product, which was called Project Service Automation. And it empowers project-centric organizations with the right capabilities to drive success. There's the project sales aspect, the project planning, the resource utilization, team collaboration, time and expense, project accounting, business intelligence. So as they say, from prospect to payment to profit is kind of all the way through that life cycle as we go in through acquiring a customer, executing for that customer, and then reaping the benefits of having a good engagement. And it's all part of the Microsoft Cloud Platform. And if we think about how rich and deep the Microsoft Cloud Platform is, there's Dynamics 365, the Power Platform, Microsoft 365, formerly known more as Office 365, and then the partner ecosystem that Microsoft leverages heavily, of which OnePlan Solutions is part of that and a notable partner for them. So on the dynamic side, there's things like the sales, the financial piece that's primary in this, but also other aspects that you might be using like supply chain and human resources and field service and marketing. The Power Platform, which many of you may be using today as well, business process automation through Power Automate, or no-code, low-code apps built with Power Apps. And many people are using the Power BI reporting and analytics today as well. Microsoft 365, the project planning that comes with Microsoft Project, or the collaborative hub that can be offered with Microsoft Teams can be a key part of hitting that collaboration portion of this solution. Now, in the partner ecosystem, people like us are bringing value-added applications and integrations and knowledge to the mix so that we can actually deliver something that is of value to the customer and maximizes the value they get from their investment in the Microsoft platform. So to maximize the value of that Microsoft investment, OnePlan brings expertise, consulting services, and powerful value-added technology. And just some of the areas are deep expertise and many decades of experience in project and portfolio management. Professional services. We are a professional services firm as well as a developer of IP, so we're very well accustomed to that. And we're actually drinking our own champagne and using the things we're talking about today in managing our own business. We're certified in Agile and scaling frameworks for those people that are going down a more Agile route, and we actually deliver our services in an Agile approach. The Power Platform, we're leaders in that. We actually help build the TPM Accelerator from Microsoft and other things like that show that our leadership, and we've been working with this fairly recent platform for a number of years as early adopters and part of their onboarding. And built for the Microsoft Cloud, everything we provide is built for the Microsoft Cloud. So we synergize very well with the core Microsoft technologies. And we've been recognized for doing these things. We're multi-gold certified in Microsoft technologies, as well as we've been named Global Partner of the Year in the project and portfolio management space. All in all, these are the value adds as a partner that we can bring to the table. So to gain a competitive edge, you want to take on the portions that are most important to your business. We need to connect teams with rich end-to-end capabilities across your entire project lifecycle with tools that work well together comprehensively. Give your project managers tools that they need to succeed, like embedded Microsoft project capabilities and collaboration so that you can ultimately better serve your customers and drive success with modern project delivery and not old legacy tools that don't meet today's needs. Also, we want to adapt to market demands. We want to focus on the right projects, prioritize well, and drive improvements with up-to-date insights so that we can actually see where things are going off the rails and see what needs our attention at a time when we still have a chance to actually have a positive impact. So if we think about capabilities that we talked about there in project operations at the top, things like CRM and contracts and resource scheduling and expense reporting and customer billing and having workflows and things like that, these are things that are core to that project operations offering. But some of the needs in the modern age sometimes need some additional capabilities that are being asked for in the marketplace. And that's where OnePlan comes in. One thing we might look at is on the right-hand side, the execution tool of choice. People are using agile tools like Jira, Azure DevOps. They're using waterfall tools like maybe the full-blown Microsoft project on the desktop or maybe the new project for the web that's embedded into project operations. And there may be some mix or hybrid of those things that are being used in actually executing and delivering on services today. So the need to have that flexibility and tool of choice is important in many organizations today. And then other things that you might want to do, project prioritization, whether it's in the proposal stage or in the execution of the project stage, being able to do what-if scenario modeling, be able to have things like agile portfolio boards and look at roadmaps and portfolio Gantt and timelines and other aspects around that are value adds that we bring to the table so that some of those modern needs we talked about earlier on, the customer can pick and choose and know that there's a solution to meet the needs that they have that they want. And not everybody may do all aspects of this, but it's nice to have this the opportunity or the options to do the things that are needed. So if we think about that central Dynamics project operations value proposition and the audiences that it addresses, and we add OnePlan to the mix, we now have things like for the project managers, like detailed schedules with multiple bill rates and other things like that have to happen in a services organization. The ability for resource managers to look at resource capacity plans and reconcile those with the portfolio of demand that's coming in based upon the projects that we win. The ability for an account manager to look at opportunities and look into it from a customer focus and be able to see how my account is doing, whether it be the projects that we're executing, the opportunities we have in the pipeline, et cetera. Be able to have insights, whether it be from a team member or an executive or a manager or partner manager perspective, to see what needs our attention and what things are maybe not performing as we would like them to. Also be able to do financials, be able to look at the financials, maybe what the original budget was, how the actuals are going, maybe what the revised forecasts look like, and compare those to see where we need to make some course corrections. And also just the overall aspects of a team member being able to do work, be able to look at everything that's on my plate and be able to status them in one place instead of going to a variety of different spreadsheets and tools in order to make that happen. So some of the things Matthew is going to show you here in the demonstration is work planning and project operations and how that can be extended. And extended could mean using different tools. Do you want the tool to be generated by a Microsoft project for the web plan or a project professional plan, which is an option that OnePlan enables for people to have? Or is it an agile plan where they might want to connect to an Azure DevOps or a Jira? A portfolio list that then lists projects in a particular view and status way so that you can have KPIs and be able to get visibility into things in ways that you don't get out of the box. Or even look at your portfolio from a more of a Kanban or Agile board as you'd like to prioritize and slot things in different ways. Portfolio roadmaps to see how we're doing from a timeline perspective and when we have key deliveries and things that are expected across a variety of different slices, whether they be by customer or a type of project or whatever it might be, or business unit, you name it. And then resource plans, capacity plans to track, forecasted and actual and other aspects of resource capacity planning to see if we have the resources to deliver. Scenario modeling, so we can factor in the portfolio and reconcile that with the resources we have at hand. Financial planning across each project and then rolling that up across all projects to see, do we have the budget or the finances, or are we tracking on our goals for how we would like to have this result financially for us as an organization. And then, as I mentioned in my work, having team members be able to go one place to see what's on their plate, what's the highest priority, and then be able to status those things without jumping around to different tool sets to make that happen, as well as if there's a timesheet that's needed for them to capture that time. And ultimately, more and more AI and intelligence is coming into this solution. So, OnePlan can bring to the mix some analysis on what requires our attention and what's missing, or maybe what's doing well, and that we can actually focus on other areas. So these are the kind of things that Matthew's going to show us today. So with that, Matthew, why don't you take it away and show us some of this stuff and how it works live in action and how it's available for them today.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. All right, so I'm logged in here into Dynamics Project Operations, and on the home page, you can see the insights that Jim was just talking about. So it's letting me know things that I need to do or things that I should bring my attention to. For example, I have 30 overdue tasks, some plans that have not been updated recently, so on and so forth. I can even click on these to take action on those into the relevant parts of the system right from here. Over on the right side of my homepage, I can see recent conversations, so we can communicate and collaborate on these different projects, tasks, whatever it may be that we're working on, backlog items, etc., and have live real-time communications around those to make sure that we're getting all of the work done. Down in the bottom, this is kind of my portal or my list of all the different recent projects that I've been to, things that I'm kind of currently working on, and or I can show just plans I own or look at all plans I have access to and search, and really just have a quick, easy way to jump into any of the different plans projects that I'm working on. So from our homepage here, let's jump in and go through really in a process order. We'll start at the beginning of where new projects can come from, all the way to execution, and then closing out and reporting on the different status of those projects as they're happening. So projects can come from a lot of different places. One way that projects can come into your organization is through the project request list. So this is especially useful if you're having internal projects going through your system as well, not just customer projects. And or sometimes your customers are internal customers, so other departments or groups of your particular company may be requesting things from you that you're then going to in turn manage and then work with them on. So you can have a full list of projects requests here. You can do some prioritization, capture some basic information, which then can eventually be converted into a proposed project where you're going to then start doing more detailed planning and figure out if and when you can do that. Another way that projects can come in, though, is if you're using the CRM module or another CRM system, and you have different opportunities that you're working on with all of your different customers. Each of those opportunities, if they end up being closed won, can turn into a particular project as well. So for example, I have an opportunity in here that I've been working on, which is this CDX PSA opportunity. And if I come into that opportunity, I can see more from the sales perspective, all of the different things that are going on, the timeline of what's been happening, who are the stakeholders, the sales team, so on and so forth, all the information around this opportunity. And I can track this opportunity through multiple different stages. But from more of the project or delivery side of things, I want to see what's in the pipe. I want to understand what opportunities are coming up, which ones are getting close, they're getting close to evaluation and execution side of things. So I can start to plan resources and such as that happens. To do that, I'm going to switch to my work plan tab here. And when we're going and actually building out proposals for customers, we can start to put together essentially a high level schedule. That may be detailed or may be very high level, but it's going to start giving us a better idea of what this project's going to take to do this. So you can see here, we have some early development that we're planning, some late development. Within that, there's different phases or stages that we're planning, the cost of those phases and stages, the resources that are assigned to this, so on and so forth, and even the revenue that we think we're going to get from it based off of the different bill rates and markups and such that we put on top of all of this. So this is going to allow me to estimate, it's going to cost $6.8 million to do this project. We think we're going to get $8.2 million of revenue out of it. So we'll have some good profit in there, and we can start to then calculate things like margin and other metrics off of this before we even get ourselves into this particular project. At the end of the day, once this project is closed won, it's going to, this opportunity is closed won, then it's going to convert over into a project, which brings me into my projects list here now. So now what I'm looking at is a list of all the different projects that are going on right now that I have access to anyway, and some key information around them: percent completes, estimated values versus actual values, starts, dates, financials, whatever it may be. And there's different views in here, so you can look at what information is more important to you. But I'll pop into one of my projects here. So that CDX opportunity, as it's been won, it can then kick off a whole new workflow here. So this is the project lifecycle side of things. So we're going to get into some planning. Eventually, we're going to start delivering or executing on this. And then hopefully at some point, we will complete and close this project out so we can continue to move on to other things for this customer and to continue to grow it. On the project homepage here, on this summary page, I can see all of the information around this project. Who's the customer, global media, what currency are we using, can do multi-currency within here, and various other pieces of information around these projects, estimated start dates, end dates, costs, etc. On the moving down the line here, as we start to actually work on this project, we can come in and we can track status. So we can see the overall project status of this project is green. Right now, our schedule is on time. Our cost performance is on budget. So we're doing pretty well. But as a project manager, I can also key in more narrative information in here around what's going on. Work performed this week, work planned next period, and any other comments I may have and such that's going to go into our status reports, which we can then show trends on over time. Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? How are things going? At the same time, if I go back into that work plan tab in here that we were just looking at through the opportunity, we can actually see within the work plan, that work plan transfers over. And so we can continue to build out more detail on this and use this to actually track our project as we're working on it and continuing on. So you can see here that same schedule, and all of the different resources and such assigned, but you have multiple options on how you want to build and track your work plan actually. So if I click the project button here, you'll see that I could have built this schedule using Project for the Web through Microsoft 365, as Jim showed earlier, or I could build this project through Microsoft Project Professional Desktop and publish it in. So you have multiple ways of going and building out your project schedule depending on exactly what you're looking for, what tools people are used to, and what makes the most sense for each particular project. At the same time, though, I can actually also track my projects in an agile way. So if I switch here to my backlog tab, we'll see that this particular project is actually also connected to Azure DevOps, and I'm rolling in a series of different features and user stories under those different features here. And so I can pull that relevant information in and get visibility into all of the different Agile work that's going on relative to this project as well, and really pull that all together into one then picture, which then rolls up into my overall status and financials and so on and so forth. So you'll see this particular project is actually connected up to Azure DevOps. And so it's going to be pulling in the relevant data as it's set up to keep this all up to date as well. On top of that, as you get your project schedule locked in, you can either then import your project schedule into the resource planner to create a high-level resource plan of what resources you think you're going to need for how long and what types. So you can see here, I think I'm going to need a developer from this date to this date about full time. I think I'm going to need Kono specifically. Maybe she has some history with this particular customer, so I already know I need her on this particular project for a certain period of time. Right now I'm in FTs, but we could look at this by percents or hours, depending on how and which ways you want to look at this information and do your top-down resource planning for these particular projects as they come in. But this really summarizes everything so we can start to do some resource management, which we'll see a little bit more of in a second. From there, then, this can even then translate into your financial plan. So we can go and build out a budget around this project. There's an import button here where I can import essentially my resource plan, and it'll then build out my labor forecast budget for all my labor costs here for me based off of the different roles and rates and such that have been set up. I can also budget out things though like revenue, and later on even then compare, say, my budget to my forecast or my budget to my actuals or budget to revenue, whatever it may be, depending on what you want to compare to each other within here, and do some analysis. So I can see, for example, in March, my revenue is going to be less than what I'm spending, but by May, it's going to start picking up. Sometimes it takes time for the revenue to start coming in after you start the work. And so you can use this to analyze that and see how things are going to lay out and so on and so forth within here. Once you've done your more detailed planning, got your schedule locked in, you got your resource plan then built, and your financials, budgets, and such built off of that, there's a full portfolio analysis module in here that you can utilize to take a look at all of the different projects that are going on. These could be both customer projects and for internal and or external customers, and or just internal, more operational projects that you want to pull into your overall portfolio as well. And so you can see here, I'm looking at many different projects and they're grouped up into my different portfolios of different things that I may be doing. But if I flip my view here to say my project summary view, instead we will see a more customer-centric view. So this is showing each customer, the projects that are going on for those different customers, status of those projects, budgets, budget variances, percent completes, relevant information. But as new things are coming into the mix here, new project requests are getting approved, new opportunities are getting closed won, things are going to be continuously flowing in here, and we have to start to do some portfolio, figure out when can we start projects, how are we going to resource them, and how are we going to make sure they stay within our budgets as well. So the first thing that I do in that process is I'm going to flip to my prioritization view. And within my prioritization view here, I can start to do some drag and drop prioritization to adjust the priorities on these. So while I'm doing that, though, I want to see relevant information, things like prioritization scores that could be calculated off of different pieces of information that we're putting in, different drivers, and how much is this going to help us as a business, so on and so forth, that can feed into that. Other things like benefits and budgets that it's going to take to do these projects, so on and so forth. From there, I can drag and drop to move things around, and essentially the higher it is on the list, the higher priority is, the lower it is down at the bottom, the lower priority is. And now I can start to use those prioritizations to make some decisions on when things are actually going to happen. And when can I get them done? When are we going to do them? So I can pop open my Gantt view here, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see a little bit better. You can see how these things are currently laid out today. But we can start to do some what-ifing around this. So the first thing I'll look at is the cost. Let's make sure that we have the money to do these things when they're being asked to be done. We got to stay within our budgets and such, especially if these are more internal types of projects. And so you can see here, it's taking all the projects, it's rolling up the budget across the top, and then I can compare that against my target and see, am I going to be over or under my total budget here? You'll see in some months I'm good, it's showing green, and other months it's red, so I'm going to have to make some adjustments. Two things you can do. One is you can say, well, some of these lower priority projects, we're just not going to do them at all, if that's a choice, depending on the type of project and what it is. And/or you can simply just move these around. It's more when are we going to do them instead of, can we do it or not? So I can drag and drop this and move this out, say 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, stagger these things a little bit better, and that may help me to keep inside my budget. If budget's not as much of a concern for you and/or resources are a concern for you, then there's a similar view that's all focused on resources. So just because we have the budget to do it and just because people are asking for it to be done in certain times, we still have to make sure we can resource these things appropriately and look out into the future and figure out, are we going to need to hire people to get some of this red to go away and/or use contractors or whatever it may be. So I can again do the same types of things, drag and drop, check and uncheck, and see how that affects my resourcing here, and come up with a top-down plan of how we're really going to get all of this work done, all of these different types of projects coming from these different sources. So this view is really nice for helping you create those different what-if plans. You can then save them as scenarios, come back to them later, and lock in plans as you go, and then you're always adjusting as new things come into your portfolio. You can make adjustments as need be. There's other views in here, though, as well. If you're looking for a more agile and/or Kanban view of the world, these are all the same projects that we were just looking at, but right now they're grouped up into swim lanes for each of my different customers. So I can easily see visually here all the projects related to the different customers. If I then flip this, though, maybe I want to see this by state. I'll see here all of my proposed projects, my active projects, my closed projects. So I can more visually see my projects here and manage those and even make updates by dragging and dropping them from, say, proposed to active when those different things occur. So you have lots of different ways that you can look at this data and use it to do your portfolio planning and make sure that we're fitting everything in, prioritizing it accordingly, and getting things done when we reasonably can. From there, A resource manager is going to be most focused just on the resource side of things. And so there's a capacity planning view in here that a resource manager can come in that's going to allow me to look across all these different projects and simply understand who's being requested for which projects, so I can then fulfill those. For example, there's a business analyst being required on that CDX PSA implementation. I need to figure out who is available to actually do that work. So I could do things like group this up by role and see my different roles here. So here are all of my business analysts, and I can see who's available or not. And then I can simply drag and drop this from business analyst to, say, Amy, if she is available in this particular period of time and has all the right qualifications, skill sets, whatever it may be, to do that while I'm doing this resource planning. So this is one kind of a report in a sense showing me where the problems are, but two, this is all actually editable. So I can come in here and make adjustments and move things around and make sure that everything's getting staffed, that we're not over allocating people too much, but we're also keeping people busy so that we're utilizing them properly, which is eventually going to affect our bottom line in a professional services type world. So switching from the resource manager side of things, as these tasks and work and projects get assigned to these different resources, these team members, they need a way to be able to come in and do the things they need to do. For example, one thing that's very common, especially in a professional services organization, but really all types of organizations, is timesheets. So as I'm getting assigned these different tasks and different projects, and I need to go in and track my time on them, which will eventually turn into possibly billing customers and invoices and so on and so forth, and or chargebacks if they're internal customers, then I need a place to be able to come in and fill out my timesheet, save and submit this, and then they can go through an approval process after that before it continues to flow back into the project and eventually into invoices and reports and so on and so forth. I also have a place though here to fill out my expenses. So if I'm traveling, for example, to customer sites and such, I may have customer travel and other types of expenses in here that we need to track and be able to roll back up into, into these projects to really track the total cost. From there, as we're filling in the timesheets, as we're updating status, creating expense reports, whatever it may be, that really all rolls up back into the project views that I was showing earlier, as well as it's actually going to allow me to generate invoices. So this creates essentially draft state invoices in here, and this is all the related information to that particular invoice. What are all the amounts? Where did it come from? So on and so forth. These can then be sent over into Dynamics F&O so that they can be tracked from a financial perspective, generate more client-friendly formats of these invoices, track the accounts receivable, revenue recognition, so on and so forth, all on the financial side of things. But this is really a feed into that. And as these projects are then going on, there's a pre-built set of reports that you can utilize to view all sorts of relevant information around these different projects. From a financials perspective, for example, I can track all of the different contracts that we have for these different projects and customers, and I can see how much was booked or sold, how much has been invoiced to date, how much of those invoices have actually been paid, and therefore what's unpaid and remaining if we have some overdue invoices and so on and so forth. What's still in our backlog, so how much more work are we still sitting on right now, that as we work, we will eventually claim this money, so assuming we continue to move forward. Make sure we have a healthy backlog, and then the age on these things. So if I see something's really old and we have a big backlog sitting on it and some unpaid invoices, I can get visibility into these things all as that's actually happening. And there's a full set of reports to look at all sorts of things, bookings versus invoices versus revenue, as well as project management reports like status reports, resource management reports, timesheet reports, so on and so forth. So you can take advantage of these out-of-the-box reports as well as add in extra things into these as they need be and get full-on dashboards that are pulling in then information from many different sources of how things are going, so you can keep kind of a pulse on what's happening over time. So with that, you can see how you can manage these projects from request or opportunity all the way through execution and then the reporting and visibility into them as they're happening all the way until closeout, all within one place, and having those rich data sets that you can then tap into to get lots of great information about. So with that, I will pass it back over to Jim for a few closing notes, and then we'll let you guys go for the day.
Thanks, Matthew. Let me know that you can see my screen okay?
I can, yes.
Terrific. Well, let's summarize and talk about some possible next steps for everybody. So let's see. So in summary, let's talk about PSA in general. Implementing PSA solution is one of the most impactful decisions an organization can make in the services industry, and that most organizations adopting PSA have seen dramatic improvements in efficiency, collaboration, and in the quality of the work that's being delivered. It frees up management, finance, and operations to focus on running the business, not reacting to the business and doing fire drills all the time or heroics in order to make it all kind of come together at the end. And accurate and timely information is critical for regulatory reporting and operational performance improvement and other aspects of the business beyond just the client visible things that they're seeing. Also, real-time visibility, like the reports and things and the views that Matthew showed, can mean the difference between low and high probability. Do we react in time in order to salvage the profitability out of an organization, or do we end up getting overrun by that and seeing it in the rearview mirror and realizing we've already been burned? The ability to anticipate and respond to changing conditions in a timely fashion can both make and save a lot of money for organizations. And as we said, the combinations of project operations in OnePlan provides a lot of rich capabilities for you to provide not only the key components or foundations to those in each of the functional areas, but also the flexibility to do planning in a way that makes sense for your organization. For example, like the planning tools. Do you want to use a lighter weight project for the web that comes in with it? Or do you want to use the more robust project professional on the desktop that has deeper set of planning and scheduling and resource management capabilities? Would you be doing this in an agile fashion with an Azure DevOps or a Jira? Or do you have a mix of projects depending on the client, depending on the preference of the people executing on those projects, have a portfolio that brings all those together so you can decide on a project by project basis how you're going to manage and what tools you're going to manage those things with. All things that the combination of project operations and bringing OnePlan into the mix gives you that flexibility and that power. If you're interested, you can get some OnePlan trial information, or we can talk about how you can get your hands on these things today. We do have a free trial up on AppSource if you want to just dabble around a little bit in OnePlan. But if, today we gave you a very high-level overview demonstration. And if you're not ready to kind of do hands-on with a trial, we can also schedule a personalized one-on-one demonstration for you to kind of address some of your personal use cases and do things on a more targeted basis. We can also provide you what we call a roadmap workshop that can say, listen, this is where you're at today as a baseline. This is where you aspire to get to. And what would it take both from a technology and a process and even a culture perspective to get you where you want to be, so you have an idea of how you can get yourself into a solution like this to better the process and the management of services engagements in your organization. And if you would like to engage us, and we'd love to engage with you, just reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai. You can also go to our website at www.oneplan.ai for a lot more information about these offerings. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. We do a lot of these webinars, almost on a weekly basis. We're right now planning the next wave of those, so you can always check in at oneplan.ai/webinars. But we also have a really deep library of on-demand webinars of things we've already done, if you want to take a look at some of those things and some of these other topical areas. Like I said, we've done this for a while. We've done it a lot for Microsoft and for our customers. And we'd like to show you how we've succeeded with other folks and the benefits that they're reaping from embarking down this journey. Thank you for your time today. Have a great day.